The new Triton has got more grunt, more towing capacity, and it's bigger overall. Its price has gone up, but it still undercuts the leading players in the segment. But has it given up its value proposition in the process? Let's see if it really has, or if the Triton's still fighting. One of the most important changes to be ushered in with the new Triton has been the increases in power and torque to 150 kilowatts and 470 newton meters, which have come thanks to the addition of another turbo to the 2.4 litre diesel engine. Of course, the other big change with the Triton has been the increase in its towing capacity, which has taken it from 3.1 tonne to 3.5 tonnes, bringing it in line with some of the market leaders. Whether or not you should be towing a trailer of 3.5 tonnes with a ute that weighs about a tonne less than that is another story. In any case, these improvements do go a long way to making the Triton more competitive against Hilux, Ranger, D-Max and others. The Triton now has the same power as the Hilux, but 30 newton meters less torque, and 4 kilowatts and 30 newton meters less than the 4-cylinder Ranger. Choose a V6 Ranger though, and that'll be way out in front. Its variable ratio electric power steering is a first for the Triton, and for a ute, it's even kind of direct. This is also the first Triton to use diesel exhaust fluid, better known by the brand name AdBlue, which is used to help reduce harmful diesel exhaust emissions. The new Triton's in-cabin refinement is much improved over the previous model. Noise, vibration and harshness is way down. Conversations are much more easily had in the cabin of the Triton on a gravel road, which in the previous model was almost impossible to do. We did get the opportunity to drive the Triton in some tough off-road conditions in the Flinders Ranges when it was launched. Most notable of the new additions is the addition of active yaw control, which subtly uses the brakes to ensure torque at each wheel is just right for the amount of traction available. It's at its most active when the Triton is in gravel drive mode, though the subtle way it optimises traction does make it difficult to detect. So it's about as capable as the previous one was, but it just does it so much more quietly, and it looks after the occupants inside the vehicle so much better than the previous model in terms of keeping the noise out, isolating them from pretty rough driving. The suspension is doing its job, and so is all of that R&D around making the vehicle so much quieter to drive. So if you are doing particularly long stints on gravel roads, you're much more likely to come out feeling fresher in the new Triton thanks to the way it looks after its occupants in that way. Dual cab utes are known for their choppy and jittery ride when they're not carrying anything. It's why the entry-level variants, the GLX and the GLX Plus, which are more likely to be used as working fleet vehicles, get the heavy-duty rear suspension for regularly carrying heavy loads in the tray. Meanwhile, the higher spec variants, being the GLS and the GSR, get the softer standard rear suspension, which rides better unladen, but has a slightly reduced payload, being 1075 kilograms in the GLS and 1030 kilograms in the GSR. The result is a noticeably less choppy ride in the higher spec models when they're unladen. The big cosmetic changes to the front and the rear bodywork are obvious, but there are other much more important changes. Firstly, if you look carefully, you'll notice that there is less rear overhang and the wheelbase appears to be longer, because it is, by 13 centimetres. This is highlighted further by the fact the new Triton is only 1.5 centimetres longer overall than its predecessor. The new Triton has a 50mm wider cabin than the old model, which has given passengers some much needed extra width inside the cabin. The Triton's got a 35mm longer rear tray, meaning if you've got a 6'2" board like this, it'll fit diagonally, if you're careful, into the ute. Make sure you tie it down, but if you're a longer person like me, thank you, my assistant, with a longer board like this, that's going on the roof. Inside, the most notable addition is the addition of a higher mounted, high resolution centre infotainment screen, Overall refinement inside the cabin is way improved. Frankly, it makes you wonder how the previous one survived for so long. The centre screen is the single most noticeable interior improvement over the previous model. It's bigger, clearer, and it's on all variants, not just the top spec ones. Plus, those regularly used secondary controls like the fan speed, the temperature, and volume control, they all have regular physical buttons, meaning you can operate them at a glance. Speed, revs, temperature, and fuel level are all real analog black and white gauges with a digital display between them. The tailgate doesn't lock with the rest of the central locking, and that may be a hassle for some, while taller drivers will probably prefer the seat went lower, including me. And the award for the biggest annoyance of all, the driver monitoring camera, which looks like it was glued to the steering column. Mitsubishi had to put it there to get a 5-star ANCAP safety rating. It does work, but sometimes too well. It beeps if you look sideways at intersections, if you put sunglasses on, especially with a hat, and if your arm blocks the view of the camera. The good news is that ANCAP is working on safety testing that will require these cameras to be more user-friendly and less distracting. So what do we like about the new Triton? Well, the upgraded engine has made it much more responsive and capable. Number 2, the Triton's Super Select 2 transmission, which allows it to drive on high traction surfaces like a dry road with four-wheel drive still engaged, is a key differentiating factor from most other utes. And number 3, there is of course its significantly upgraded interior. So what are our dislikes? Well, there have been some price rises of course, but the biggest one really is the driver monitoring camera, which sits on the steering column and monitors the driver, but can be easily obscured by the driver's arms, or even when you're just looking from side to side at a crossroads and it thinks that you're not watching the road ahead. So that is an issue with the system at the moment. And finally, the engine power and torque outputs are welcome, but they're not quite up to those of its rivals. And to the specs, the engine is a 2.4 litre bi-turbo diesel, generating 150 kilowatts at 3,500 RPM. Torque is at 470 Newton meters at a low 1,500 RPM. Fuel consumption is at 7.7 litres per 100 kilometres in the regulatory test, and the price is $57,430 drive away for the GLX 4x4. The Triton has a 5-star ANCAP safety rating, which was achieved against the current protocols that were introduced in 2023. So, is this the ute for you? Well, the Triton has really signalled Mitsubishi's intention to move away from second-tier utes and mix it with the front runners. It's now much closer in capability to the front runners of the segment. And while it's not quite there, that doesn't really matter, because the Triton has found a great balance between refinement, value, and capability. So if you're thinking about a new D-Max, a new Navara, or a new BT50, the new Triton should also be on your shopping list.